Hello everyone and welcome to the beginner series lessons of rigging. This is volume 1 and today is lesson 1 of rigging, which is starting completely fresh here in Blender and trying to learn how to make a bone, how we can create an armature, edit the armature, add bones, give them names, rename the bones, and also making sure that they follow the naming conventions that allow us to later on mirror the bones from one side to the other, along with some tips here and there. Now keep in mind, this series is going to be taught in Blender 4.0.1. So if you want to follow along, later on in this series we'll have practical examples that we can follow along. And of course you can download these files for free and follow along. I'll include them in the description, but for the current 2 lessons we'll have no files, but in the 3rd lesson we'll be having a file sample that you can follow along and get from there. If you want to create an armature, you simply go to the Add menu here and click on Armature. And you can have either single bone, human, meta rig, or animals, or basic. Now VRM humanoid is an add-on that I have downloaded, which is why it would not show on your end in this case. So don't worry about it. It's just an extension for another program called Vroid. But that's another story, and that's another video topic as a whole for maybe another time. Now the point is, we want to create an armature and click on the single bone. Now that's one way of creating the armature, and as you can see here we have a menu here. If we press F9 and we have this little context menu that just disappeared. Now if you want it to reappear, we press F9 anywhere and it will show us here. So add armature, we have the radius, alignments, and we can play with the following settings, but we don't have to deal with any of that just yet. What's important now is creating the armature. So again, add armature single bone. Now there's another way of creating the armature if you'd like, and let's delete this. So I'm going to click on this and press delete. If I press Shift A, it will also open the add menu, and from here we can add the armature and do that. Or if you want to use the search function, which is if you press F3, it'll open up a search function, and if you type armature, and then here we have select by type, we can click on armature or single bone, and it shows you the shortcut here, Shift A, armature, single bone, and that's how we do it. So we have 3 ways, either clicking on the add menu or using the Shift A shortcut, or just pressing F3 for the search menu and type in single bone, for example, and adding the armature. Now, we have an armature, but it has a single bone. How do you go on about editing this? So in order to edit this, we have to change from object mode to edit mode. Edit mode allows us to do a lot of fancy stuff to the armature here. So we can click on the tip here, the head, or the tail. So we can click the head of the bone here and move it around by pressing G. We can select the base here and we can press scale. It'll scale up. We can rotate it if you want. And we can also, like in edit mode, we can also click on the tip here and press E and it will extrude. So we can also fill. So if we select this bone and we click here on, if you select this, the head of this bone and the tail of this, for example, we can press F to fill and it will connect to it. Or if we can select here, it will do the same thing nonetheless. So if we press F here, it will automatically fill here, and we have these connected to one another. Now you notice that we have bones that are connected here. So these bones are connected to one another, and if we want to disconnect them, we can completely separate them by pressing Y, and it will disconnect the bone from the hierarchy. And if we want to just keep them parented but not connected, we press Alt P, and it will open up a menu called Clear Parent. So we have Clear Parent or Disconnect Bone. Now Disconnect Bone will completely separate this, and it will separate from the parent like that. But if we press Clear Parent, it will separate it also, and it will not have any relationship lines. So earlier, if we press Alt P, like here, if we press Alt P, hold on, let me just have it connected. Now, if I press Alt P and click on disconnect bone, and if I move the bone, you'll notice that there are these dotted lines that are going from here to here. This is what we call a relationship line. Now, relationship lines indicate that this bone is parented to the root bone. So how do you find out that it's connected? Well, if we go from edit mode to object mode, and from edit mode to pose mode is another mode that allows us to animate. This is extremely handy for animating characters, but that will be for a complete different story. The main goal of the pose mode is that it lets you pose stuff. So now we have this parented, and you can see that if we move this around, this other bone that is connected to this one follows. And if we move it from the base, everything moves. Now, there's a quick way of going at it to switch between modes, so you don't have to go here every time. If we press Control Tab, it'll switch us to object mode, and if we press Tab here or hold Tab, it'll open a pie menu, and it will allow us to go to edit mode. So here, if we hover the mouse, let go, we are in edit mode. Now, this was unparenting bones. What about if we want to parent these bones? Let's say these were disconnected completely from one another. So let's select this bone, and then select this one, and then press Control P. Again, Control P makes you connect them. Alt P makes you clear them. So Control P is for parenting. Alt P is for unparenting. So we're going to select this one and select this one. Press Control P, and we can have them either keep an offset, meaning it will not connect the bones together, or if we don't want to, we can have it connected. So Control P, connected, and it will connect this bone again back to this one. And the same case can be said to this. So if we want to do it in a chain-like form, we can do it. So Control P, connected, both of them will be connected. Or if we want to have both of these connect to this one, so we press Control P, keep offset. And notice that these will be parented to the root bone, meaning if I were to move this bone in pose mode, so if I hold Control Tab, go to pose mode, switch, that's also another option. If we're in edit mode, a pie menu will open. So we go to pose mode, and if I move this, it'll move. If I move this, it'll also move. And separately, they're not connected, but if I move it from the root bone, it'll move together. Now, we can go back to edit mode once more. And let's clear the parents again by Alt P. So Control P allows us to keep offset, keep them connected, or if we want to do like a chain here, so let's see. I'll select this one, press Control P, and then select this bone and select this one and press Shift R. Shift R is the repeat command, which repeats whatever last command we did. So our command was parenting a bone while keeping offset. So the same case can be done if we move the bone to the x-axis. So let's say I'm going to move it like this, and if I press Shift R, it'll repeat the steps over and over depending on how many times you want to press it. So I'm going to undo here. In the same case, it'll do the same thing here. So any command that you did last time and you press Shift R, it will repeat it. Now that we know how to do these, I'd like to show you some additional options that can be really handy for when you want to rig. So let's begin here. We have two options here in particular. We'll start off with the stick figure that is running. This one is called the object data properties. So you can see it's called data or data. And you can see if we keep the mouse hovering, it will say object data properties. This is extremely handy for viewing a variety of settings. So we have the viewport display settings. This will show us a bunch of options that we can use. So the main one being octahedral, display as octahedral. This displays the shape of the bones. So by default, Blender has all these bones displaying as octahedral, which they look like these sorts of shapes. We can change the display options to whatever we like. We can have it sticks, we can make it as boxy bones, we can make them as envelopes, we can make them as wire if we'd like, but I prefer octahedral for now for the simplicity. And of course, this option here, which is called show, it will show us the shapes, bone colors, names, and you can see that we have names here. Now, we don't have particular names set up for these bones, so let's talk about it. Let's rename a bone. So I'd like to rename this one and give it the name root. In order to do that, we press F2. It'll say bone name, which is the renaming function. And if we call it root, here you go, it changed its name. Here we're going to call this bone _1 and bone _2. And here we have it. We have renamed these. So F2 is for renaming bones if you want. These options are pretty handy. So for the names, if you want to see the name of the bones, and if you want to change things, you can do that. Now here's another fancy option called in front. So what it will basically let us do is it will allow us to have the bones display in front of objects, meaning it will get the priority in the visibility part of it. So if we go to object mode real quick and go to Shift A, Mesh, add a cube, and notice how if we move it around, that the bones are visible in front. So this is with the in front mode enabled. Now, if I disable this, notice that the cube is blocking the view or obscuring the view of the bones. We can still see the names of the bones, but it's no longer visible in front of us. So this option is handy for whenever you want to see your bones in front of objects that are obscuring the vision or blocking the way of viewing the bones. You can do that, or if you don't like this, you can uncheck this, press Alt-Z, which enables X-ray mode, and Shift-Z is for wireframe mode. So Shift-Z, wireframe mode, you can toggle it on and off. Alt-Z for X-ray mode, you can toggle it on and off. Now, let's get back to the rigging part. So, let's create a basic leg rig, and we're gonna do it now. So I'm gonna click here on the root, or not necessarily under. So let's create a basic leg rig. I will press numpad 1. It will put us in front perspective, and if I press numpad 5, it will have us at front orthographic. So if I press Shift A whilst in edit mode, it will create a bone for us. Now, depending on where our 3D cursor is, we can click here, Shift, and right click, and then let's just quickly remove this bone. So the bone will be created depending on where our 3D cursor is. If we press Shift A, it'll create a bone. Right now, the bone is overlapping our root bone, so we don't want that. The bone placement, or the bone, will spawn wherever our 3D cursor is. So if we hover over here with our cursor and hold Shift and right click, the cursor is placed here, and if we press Shift A, it'll spawn the bone here. So now we have a bone here in the front perspective. We're going to move this up here a little bit, scale it down by pressing S, and you can see the shortcut keys here while I'm pressing in real time, so you don't have to worry. So we're going to call this hip, and then we're going to duplicate this by pressing Shift D and then pressing X to move it on along the X-axis. And then we're going to change our view by pressing numpad 3 and by pressing G and moving the bone here. We're going to align it. We're going to create a leg, so a leg bone here, so we're going to do that. So I have the head of the bone selected. If I press E to extrude, it will have it here, so I'm going to angle it like this, and then E to extrude again like this. Now we have a basic leg rig. What I'm going to do here is select the thigh bone here, or the upper leg, select the hip bone, press Ctrl P, keep offset. Okay, when we're going to select the hip bone, click here, and keep offset as well. So now we have all of these connected with one another. Let's rename these bones. So I'm gonna call this one upper underscore leg underscore left. You can call it, you can give it multiple names like underscore left or underscore L or dot left or dot L. These are very important to know because in Blender, you have to keep a convention, a certain naming convention that allows us to mirror these bones to one side. So for maximum efficiency, we only create one side of the rig. So for example, the left side, and then we mirror to the other side. This is very effective if your characters are symmetrical. You can still do the same thing. You can still do the same thing for asymmetrical characters, but one of the sides will have to be adjusted manually, of course. So I'm gonna keep this here and I'm gonna call it underscore left for the time being. And then I'm gonna go to here, lower underscore leg underscore left, and then foot underscore left. Now that we have named our bones and they have their respective hierarchy, if we go to pose mode and move this, as you can see that the bones are following and they have a specific hierarchy. Each of them will have a specific hierarchy here that we can work with. Now let's go to edit mode really quick, unparent this bone, call it clear parent, and parent it again, but maintaining an offset. The reason for that will be for later, and we'll explain it in lesson 2 as we're going to continue. But for the time being, we have created a very basic leg rig that will be handy. Now, of course, we don't want a single leg here, so we want to mirror it to the other side. So how do we do that? Well, if you select your bones here, like this, you can shift select, or if they are all connected, we can press L for select linked, and then shift select this one, like that, and we go to armature and symmetrize. If we click that, we have bones on the other side. They're symmetrized. Now if I press F9, the symmetrize menu will allow us to have from negative X to positive X. And for our case, since we have rigged and we have the bones on the X-axis, it will symmetrize it to the negative or positive X-axis. And so this is a very basic leg rig that we just made. In the next lesson, I will cover more about orientations of bones, how to edit the orientations, and some tips aligning bones. And next time, we're going to talk about constraints and specifically how to use IK constraints for the legs. And we'll create one on one side and we'll mirror it to the other side. So stay tuned for lesson 2. Thank you guys for watching, and if you found this content helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you have any questions or feedback, please let me know once again in the comment section. Thanks for watching.